Well, good evening all. It's turning into woolly hat weather once again, and the days are getting shorter and darker, colder and wetter. Oh, it's all doom and gloom, isn't it? And I suppose more of us will probably be spending more time in our sheds or whatever than perhaps on the road. And that, and something that someone remarked on the other day, has sort of inspired this video, if you like. I don't think I've touched directly on the subject before. Running in when you've rebuilt or partially rebuilt an engine, be it new piston rings, pistons and rings, rebore, total rebuild, whatever. You've got the matter of running the engine in. And this guy said to me what I've heard a lot of, actually. He didn't relish the thought of having to do 30 miles an hour everywhere on his newly rebuilt Royal Enfield 250. It's a sort of reasonable comment to make, but you don't have to do that. What I find is, especially with small bikes that perhaps don't have immense top speeds anyway, my own Triumph Tiger Cubs being a perfect example of that, especially the likes of the Trials Cub, which is on pretty low gearing. You go out on the road and you perhaps even run in, you might struggle to sort of do much more than 50 miles an hour comfortably. But to try and do 30 miles an hour these days on the roads we got and the conditions we got and the traffic, it's almost suicide actually, and you don't have to do it. What I do when I'm running an engine in, a newly rebuilt engine that I've just perhaps started for the first time, I'll run it obviously in a workshop, on the bench, on the bike lift, whatever, get it all warmed through and check for obvious signs of leaks, of smoke, anything that might be amiss that might need a bit of attention. And if all's well, I'll do a couple of trips up and down the lane. I'm lucky I live on a quiet lane. But really, I probably won't cover much more than half a mile or a mile in total doing that, and maybe sort of less than 20 minutes running time for the engine before it's time to hit the road. And I can't really be doing 30 miles an hour. I don't feel safe doing that, for one thing, but you don't have to. It's all well and good, perhaps, not wanting to rev the engine too hard, I understand that. But what you don't want to do is be in a situation where perhaps you're in top gear and you're making sure that you don't do over 30 miles an hour, because that isn't really very productive or very good for the engine, and potentially not very good for you if something comes along around a corner behind you and gets too close to your rear end. So what I tend to do is, and in fact some of the manuals tell you similar to this anyway, even the old ones, in fact the Triumph Tiger Cub manual being one of them, where it says, and this is the way I treat most of the things that I'm running in, keep the loads light. That's different to a fixed sort of speed limit or whatever, because 30 miles an hour, alright, theoretically, you've got a 4-speed engine, 30 miles an hour in top on a flat is nothing. It's little more than ticking over probably. But if you come to an incline and you're trying to hold 30 miles an hour in top gear perhaps, and you find yourself having to open the throttle more and more to maintain that speed, you find that what you're actually doing is you're loading the engine up, and that's what you don't want to be doing. It's actually better for the engine to find there will be what you might want to term a sweet spot. And on the likes of my Scrambles Cub there behind me, when I started riding that, I was certainly doing at least 40 miles an hour on it in top gear, maybe more, but I was never probably going beyond, I don't know, perhaps approaching half throttle, maybe a little over half throttle on occasion, and that would be it, because once you start opening the throttle wider, the revs themselves, obviously there's a point where the revs themselves will be a danger, but the revs themselves aren't usually the element that can cause damage. That's the load, and that is where the temperatures rise when the engine's working harder and you're opening the throttle wider. You could have, for instance, a situation on a incline where you might, if you want to do your 30 miles an hour and you're going along in top gear, you might find that you get in a situation where you're approaching full throttle just to maintain 30. However, if you let the engine rev higher and probably work in its power band, even 4-stroke singles, believe it or not, have a power band, there's always an area where they're more comfortable and they're happy. Perhaps the vibration smooths out to a sweet spot or whatever it is. And if you stick in that zone, that's probably happy. Starting off, I like to warm an engine up, as I've said, in the workshop first, up and down the lane, whatever. Get it warmed up nicely before you take to the road. That's important, because any stress on an engine that hasn't warmed up, that is probably when you're most likely to have, if a piston's going to seize or something, when the piston starts working and getting hot before your usually iron cylinder barrel on a lot of these machines has warmed up, you'll find that the piston probably has expanded or started to expand more and more rapidly than the bore that it runs in, and that's when you'll get tightening up. Obviously, the flip side is if you're wringing its neck and you're going uphill, temperatures will be rising and you might cause a seizure then as well, which is why you don't want to overload the engine at high revs as well. But basically, once something's warmed up, the oil's warmed up, keep it spinning relatively fast, because another side effect of that is the oil pump is working faster, the oil is getting circulated faster, and the oil pressure is higher and it's getting flung about more, and that's a good thing. If you're going around at low speeds, the oil pump will be working and the oil pump should be circulating and whatever, but probably not anywhere near its maximum flow or pressure or capacity. And you want to get that oil flung around, oiling things, cooling them, and let the engine spin and work less than it would if you got the engine running slowly and you got the throttle open wider. Another good thing, especially when you're running in, a lot of my bikes, again including the Scrambles Cub behind, are set up to specs, but I've got a one size larger needle jet in it than it would have had originally, and I've discussed and touched on that subject. I've made a dedicated video to that, and I've also mentioned it here and there. That seems to work as well. It lowers the combustion temperature a little, having a slightly rich mixture, which also helps keep the temperatures down and the likelihood of tightening up to a minimum perhaps, but it certainly reduces it quite a bit, so it reduces the risk again of tightening up. Once an engine's done quite a few 100 miles or 1,000 or 2,000 whatever, things loosen up. If you feel like it, you can weaken off the mixture, but I stuck with what I started with on this Scrambles Cub, and you've only got to watch the videos to know that it runs really well. It's happy with life, and it's certainly performing every bit as well as it should have done probably when it was new. But had I decided that I wouldn't go over 30 miles an hour on it everywhere around here with all the steep hills we've got, not to mention on the A40 road we got here that's quite busy, I'd have probably had a really unpleasant time trying to cover any ground at 30 miles an hour on it. Now, another thing with it, this one in particular, in fact, the two of my Tiger Cubs, there's this one here that's got a close ratio gearbox. The Trials Cub has got a wide ratio gearbox. What that boils down to, on this machine, if I'm in second gear and I want to change up to third and I'm on a slight climb, it's best to really open the throttle briefly, get the revs right up, then there's a big jump, there's a big gap to third, because otherwise, if you don't get the speed up in second, by the time you put it in third, you're opening the throttle, the revs could be falling back on that hill, the load and the pressures in the cylinders are increasing, and that's not good. On the Trials Cub, that big jump is between third and fourth, but the same applies. So that, in situations like that, if you're running in, I would say if you've got a big jump from one gear to the next, open the throttle, let it rev, don't worry about it, it's only brief, but it'll help when you hook the next gear up. The engine should be able to catch and pull and accelerate again, and once again you can keep the throttle opening below or up to about half throttle and get accelerating, ready to get up to your next gear. Much better than lugging the thing and labouring the engine, because that is also not good for the big end when you've got the bang, bang, bang going on as the firing pulses get harder and that conrod is slamming its way into the crank pin as you're juddering along at 30 miles an hour up that hill in top gear. Drop a gear, let the revs pick up, give the big end a chance to spin faster, get more oil around it and a lighter load on it, and it'll pay dividends in the long run. There's probably all sorts of other reasons as well, but I found that those are the main ones. And as for the 250 Royal Enfield being running at 30 miles an hour, I actually answered the guy because he asked me, and I said, don't be afraid to go to 50 miles an hour or over. As long as you've got the gear selection right, you're in the right gear for where you're at, and the throttle opening right and the load is light, that's no problem at all. And you can actually, after you've done 100 or 200 miles, you can open up a bit more probably, and I wouldn't say try and find out what the top speed is, but you can probably nip along quite respectably, and I almost put money on it, you won't do any harm to the engine. You're certainly less likely to do harm to the engine using it like that than if you try. Alright, you might mean well, but if you try to adhere to a 30 mile an hour maximum, you're possibly and probably more likely to do harm to the engine than you would if you enjoyed buzzing along a little bit more rapidly than that. So I think I've said all I need to say, or all I can think of saying about that at the moment, and I think that about covers it. I would say take it from me, but I'm not that big-headed, but that's the way I treat my engines, and the engines that I've rebuilt for customers in their bikes when I've taken them out. Don't try and nurse them, because that you're actually smothering them with love, if you like. Make them work a bit, not too hard, and enjoy them, and in the long run things should all work out pretty well, I would think. Thanks for watching.